The Buffalo Bills are 6-2 this year. They lead the AFC East. They just beat the New England Patriots in Buffalo for the first time in almost 10 years. And they're looking pretty good. How much of a challenge are they going to be for the Seahawks on Sunday? I thought it would be best to go behind enemy lines with my college classmate from Syracuse University, Heather Prusak.
I was just kind of curious what Paul gets to see.
You are definitely living in the hindsight world today, Paul.
You got f***ing grow up, mother. Are you kidding me?
Oh, Gallant, what the hell is wrong with you?
Hey, what's going on, friend?
It's good to see you. The Seahawks.
You too. I know I think it took us probably like 20 minutes just reminiscing about stuff before we actually got going.
Right. I mean, the last time we saw each other in person in a pre-COVID world was before a Texans and Bills game. And since then, the Buffalo Bills have all of a sudden become the number one team in the AFC East, which
right?
That's so strange for me personally, definitely a little bit hard on my heart, but that's neither here nor there. What's the feeling in Buffalo right now? Because I know that this is a fan base that sometimes thinks that the worst is right around the corner.
Yeah, it's, there's a lot of optimism and people are really excited, but especially for Bills fans, and I know this is the case with a lot of fan bases, but I mean, when things are going well, it's, hey, let's print the Super Bowl tickets, and when things aren't going well, it's, oh my gosh, the sky is falling, fire everybody. So, obviously they have a little bit of a rocky patch, losing back-to-back games against the Titans and the Chiefs. For me, really that Titans game was actually the one that was a little bit more concerning for me than losing to the defending Super Bowl champs, a game that was actually pretty close. So it's, fans are, but overall, I mean, they're excited. They're 6-2 at, the unofficial halfway point of the season. Things are looking up. Lately, the past 4 games, things have looked a lot different than the first month of the season. But overall, I mean, fans are just really excited to see finally, especially in the division, as you mentioned. I personally don't want to go as far as to say that there's a changing of the guard just yet after just one win against the Patriots, but it's certainly a step in the right direction. So fans are really, really excited right now.
Definitely a big step, and if they are able to beat them a second time, they're going to make history twice against New England. Who would have thought it would come, but it's about time, honestly, that it has come on that front. Josh Allen is quite the polarizing quarterback. I know that the show that I am on, between my co-host Danny and myself, we are not the biggest Josh Allen enthusiasts, but we do have to give him credit because he did take a big step forward this offseason. I don't know if we're going to go so far as to put him in the MVP conversation like some people. He was awesome the first 4 games of the year. The last 4 games, he has been much more down to earth. What is the real Josh Allen?
I think it's kind of a mixture of the first 4 games of the season and then the past 4 games of the season. And you mentioned he's such a polarizing player. I think it's because, expectations for him coming into the league, his accuracy was a big question mark. And, his first 2 seasons, he struggled on the deep ball and being able to connect on those downfield passes. That was something that attracted his cannon of an arm, that, big arm, strong arm is what really attracted him to the Bills, to Sean McDermott and GM Brandon Beane. So the fact that the first month of the season, he was able to really, silence some of those critics by hitting those explosive pass plays with guys like Stephon Diggs, finally have a number 1 wide receiver and that legitimate deep threat. And then when, he's on the field, you got John Brown, because Diggs' presence just helps everybody in this passing game. But I think that recently, starting with that blowout loss to the Titans, they kind of set the tone for teams moving forward and opposing defenses on how to limit those explosive pass plays. They've seen a lot more zone coverage and zone defense lately, and that's something that, taking those deep shots, we haven't seen many of them lately because of that. And, we hear all the time, they say, take what the defense gives you, and that's kind of what they've been doing the past 4 games. And for me personally, I get that to an extent, but I feel like there's got to be a balance between taking what the defense gives you and not allowing opposing defenses to dictate just what you're going to do on offense, because that's really what worked the first month of the season. And going against a high-powered offense led by front-runner MVP candidate Russell Wilson, in order to keep up with them, you can't. I don't trust the Bills' defense to keep them in a tight game if they were to try to run it out, keep Wilson off the field as long as possible. That strategy there.
The Seahawks defense has its own issues, so I'd be curious to see too if Buffalo goes back to being aggressive. They, even with last week where they were up 30-7 at one point, always seem to find a way to allow the other team back in the game and allow it to go down to the wire. And Allen is so interesting because he tries to make plays the same way that Russell Wilson does. He just doesn't seem to have a governor as far as the really crazy decisions, like random laterals to some dude that he thinks is nearby him, or throwing a football downfield into triple coverage to a fullback like in the playoffs against the Texans last year.
Yeah, there are some plays so far this season that he's lucky that haven't been picked off with some of these decision makings. So he's definitely made strides. Last year, what it was for him was he really took a step in his short intermediate game, and not, kind of getting away from trying to play hero ball all the time. Actually, the first time they played the Patriots here in Buffalo, that it was a 16-10 loss for them. He had 3 interceptions. That was really a turning point for him because he was forcing so many things in that game. So he's gotten away from that a little bit. But now I feel like, they put up 123 points, I believe it was, the first month of the season. They've only put up 75 in the past 4 games. So they really need to get back to reestablishing that dangerous passing attack there.
They're no longer about the defense, it seems, too, which is strange because the last couple of years, that's what we thought about Buffalo for, that defense of theirs.
Yeah, and it was very surprising to me because on paper, going into this season, they looked poised to finish as a top 3 unit for the 3rd year in a row. They have so many familiar faces back. They did lose a couple key guys in Jordan Phillips and Shaq Lawson, 2 guys that were just crucial roles in not only their run defense but their pass rush too. So that's something that they left in free agency. They brought in a bunch of veteran guys to try to bolster this defensive line. So it's very interesting to see now. I know that points are up around the league, but there's just so much continuity on that side of the ball that I guess I just, we didn't see it being to the point where the offense was going to constantly have to carry them in games. So the script is completely flipped because that's what it was. Last year, the recipe for success was the defense won them games and carried them in games while the offense did just or barely enough. So it's weird to think about, this Buffalo Bills team now being led by their offense when their defense was such a strength and such a, so strong for the past couple of years now.
Who's more important? Is it Stephon Diggs or is it Tre'Davious White?
I would say at this point, just based off of how they're playing this season, I would say Stephon Diggs, because Tre'Davious White, he's such a key player on that defense. But the defense, just even with him in there, they've struggled just across the board. Whereas on offense, Diggs has just made such a difference. His presence out there, I mentioned this earlier, when he's out there, he's drawing tons of coverage, tons of eyes there. He's drawing all that attention on him, and it's really benefited guys like John Brown, slot receiver Cole Beasley. Even they've got a rookie Gabriel Davis who, 4th rounder. He's been able to make a little bit of an impact there. So what Diggs does on the field, even when he doesn't have the ball, I would say to how this team is playing, I would say Diggs at this point.
That's interesting because we're very curious about the Seahawks version of Stephon Diggs, which one week could be Tyler Lockett and the next week could be DK Metcalf. Metcalf in particular this last week where he was just an absolute monster, literally, against the San Francisco 49ers. Who do you think would end up covering who? Who is going to cover Tyler Lockett? Who's going to cover DK Metcalf? That's what I think a lot of Seahawks fans are curious about right now because it's a tough matchup. Whoever you pick, the other guy's probably going to end up having a big day.
Right. And I would say I'd probably lean more towards Trey White going with DK Metcalf just because of that speed factor. But you never know. They also could try to, do it by committee and maybe play a little bit more zone and get away from man a little bit just because there are so many threats that Russell Wilson has at his disposal on that side of the ball. You mentioned the Seahawks having their own issues. I know that they've been banged up. The Bills defense is dealing with a lot of injuries right now as well. Their stud linebacker, Matt Milano, he's been, banged up in and out with a pec injury. Tremaine Edmonds just is not playing the way that many of us thought he would in his third year, just at times looking lost out there. I mean, he's not doing well in coverage. He's struggling to get off blocks. And then AJ Klein, another one of their linebackers who came over from the Saints in free agency, same thing. He just hasn't made an impact. They tried to bring him in to fill the void for veteran Lorenzo Alexander. So that linebacking core is having a lot of issues. That's why teams have been able to run all over them at times. So, I also wouldn't be surprised. I know, the Seahawks bread and butter is what Russell Wilson can do in the passing game, but I also wouldn't be surprised if we saw Seattle be able to get their running game going because that's been a huge weakness of this Bills team is their run defense.
And the tricky thing is Seattle's so banged up with their running backs right now. We're not sure if Chris Carson's going to play. We're not sure if Carlos Hyde's going to play. Travis Homer, we're not even really sure about his status.
On their fourth option last week, right?
DJ Dallas, as my co-host obnoxiously says from time to time, the way that you say DJ Khaled. We'll see. Back in the day, and by back in the day, I mean literally last year, the Seahawks loved running the football. And all of a sudden, they've turned into this team that throws and throws and throws some more. It's been a very curious evolution of Pete Carroll, who is now 69 years old. You wouldn't think you would be changing the way that you do things at this stage in your career. All right, I have last one.
You mentioned the running game, too. I mean, Russell Wilson, containing that, what he's able to do outside of the pocket and make things happen with his legs and extend plays. They struggle. They've struggled against quarterbacks like that. They were able to kind of contain Cam Newton at times last week, but I mean, he was still able to rip off some big runs. So, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Wilson himself have some success in that area too.
Yeah, he has been having some success scrambling. I want to go back to college. This is the last question because we both went to Syracuse University. So, back in college, I didn't think that this was a problem, even though my professors told me that you should probably change this up because it's very unprofessional. Heather, I'm going to allow you to be as vicious as possible because we are friends. How bad was my hair in college?
How much time do we have? It wasn't great. It was, but you know what? We all had some questionable fashion, style decisions, whatever you want to call it. But it was a lot. It was aggressive. It was a very aggressive hairstyle.
If you had to describe it as something, like what was I going for in your mind? Because I don't even know what I was going for anymore.
I feel like it almost reminded me of like a kid that wanted to be like in a rock band, sort of. Like it was just kind of like all over the place, and it was almost like that kid that's like I just don't care and like whatever, and like this is like I woke up like this sort of. So it kind of just went wherever it wanted.
I think that's what I was going for. If Justin Bieber did grunge music, that's what I thought it looked like. In reality, it looked like this weird helmet that had a very large visor that could also serve as a baseball cap.
Now I need to go dig up some pictures of that.
Please don't.
And when you tweet out this link, I'm just going to post a picture with it.
Please do. Actually, check that. Please don't. I don't know why I'm saying please do. Heather, this is great. At H.A. Prusak on Twitter for News 4 Buffalo. I'm looking forward to this game. It's early for us. I have to get used to that. These 10 a.m. games for Pacific Coasters, it doesn't feel right to me. You guys should have.
I know. I definitely don't envy you because.
Let me sleep in.
we've got a pregame show an hour before kickoff from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. So if it was a 10 a.m. game on our end, that would not be great.
Definitely not for me at the very least. So yeah, lucky you. You get to sleep in. Enjoy the apparently wonderful weather in Buffalo this weekend too.
It's beautiful. It's supposed to be around 70 on Sunday compared to the rainy, wet, windy 40, 50 mile per hour winds that they were dealing with last week. So there's weather-wise, there should be no excuse for these two offenses. So hopefully, I'm hoping for an offensive shootout because that's what I love the most. We'll see. But it should be a good one. I'm excited.
Whenever you play the Seahawks, probably is going to be an offensive shootout. Heather, this is fun. And I guess let's do this again if they meet in the Super Bowl or something.
Right. Thanks, dude.
Thank you.